We started in 2007, what was called the first nuclear renaissance.
We do plan to demonstrate these technologies as rapidly as possible in the U.S.
The introduction of small and micro reactors could be life-changing for those communities.
We are working with Romania as a strategic partner on your energy security, on your energy diversification.
I think the American approach should be, let's offer some of our best technology to our friends and partners.
These are really, 100-year commitments when you talk about decommissioning and building.
I believe it can become the main source of nuclear energy for the generation of electricity.
And in Romania, the American company NuScale Power will build the first of its kind small modular reactor plant. This will help bring online zero-emission nuclear energy to Europe faster, more cheaply, and more efficiently. The U.S. government is helping advance the development of this groundbreaking American technology, which will strengthen Europe's energy security and create thousands of jobs in Romania and the United States.
În 2022, la summitul G7, președintele american Joseph Biden anunța că guvernul american va sprijini financiar construirea centralei nucleare cu reactoare modulare mici din România. Era o reconfirmare a acordului comercial garantat și sprijinit politic la cel mai înalt nivel de a instala în România primele reactoare modulare mici din Europa. Centrala de la Doicești, Dâmbovița, va fi a doua din lume de acest tip după cea din Idaho.
Thank you.
Războiul din Ucraina a generat o criză energetică fără precedent în Europa. Statele europene, dependente de gazul rusesc, au căutat soluții rapide, pe termen scurt, pregătind strategii pe termen lung. În plus, angajamentele privind neutralitatea climatică deveneau critice. Unele state, în special cele din estul Europei, s-au îndreptat către energia nucleară. Vom încerca în cele două episoade ale acestui reportaj să aflăm ce este de fapt această tehnologie, de ce România a ales să fie un pionier în dezvoltarea acestei tehnologii, care este viitorul energiei nucleare în lume și în România. Să mergem mai întâi în Statele Unite. Primul reactor experimental din Statele Unite a fost pus în funcțiune în 1951 la Idaho Falls. Alte 51 vor fi construite aici, pe teritoriul celui mai important laborator nuclear național. În 1958, în statul Pennsylvania, era dată în funcțiune prima centrală nucleară comercială din lume. Astăzi, în Statele Unite, funcționează 92 de reactoare în scop comercial, iar în întreaga lume 410. Alte 57 sunt în construcție. După optimismul cu care omenirea descoperea beneficiile energiei nucleare, au urmat primele incidente și primele proteste în anii 1970. Astăzi, producția de energie electrică pe bază de tehnologie nucleară din Statele Unite este de 778 de teravați, dublu față de China, următoarea clasată în topul mondial.
The U.S. built a lot of nuclear capacity in the 1970s and 1980s. Then there was a bit of a pause and talk of a nuclear renaissance in the early 2000s.
Natural gas was cheaper for a long time, and nuclear was not competitive.
There was a change, like say 2009, 2010, where industry and private capital started investing in nuclear because they recognize, the need for the build out of that clean electricity.
When nuclear power plants produce electricity, they don't produce any greenhouse gases. So that's why you may hear the association of it being a clean energy source, because there's no greenhouse gases produced.
This is definitely a watershed moment right now for the history of nuclear energy in the United States as well as around the world. Nuclear generation right now provides the majority of the United States carbon-free electricity. With that being said, we still need more.
Deși Rusia conta în Statele Unite ale Americii cu doar 8% din importurile de petrol și produse derivate înainte de invadarea pe scară largă a Ucrainei, criza care a urmat a arătat vulnerabilitatea securității energetice a Statelor Unite datorită lanțurilor de aprovizionare puternic globalizate. Invazia rusă a dus la creșterea prețurilor la benzină și creșterea inflației. În martie 2022, președintele Biden interzicea importurile de țiței și petrol, gaz lichefiat și cărbune din Rusia. Dependența Uniunii Europene era însă mult mai mare. 40% din consumul de gaz și 25% din cel de țiței și petrol veneau din Rusia. În lunile dinaintea invadării Ucrainei, Putin a manipulat piețele de gaz, alimentând temerile legate de o iarnă grea în Europa, unde aproape 40% din încălzirea locuințelor se face cu gaz natural. Nevoia de securitate energetică și realizarea neutralității climatice au dus în Statele Unite și în unele state europene către energia nucleară.
So many countries are now talking so much more today than they were 16 months ago about energy security.
I think this shift has been happening. We've seen what I would say a nuclear renaissance in Europe. And I think what we're seeing in Central and Eastern Europe in particular is going to be the heart of this renaissance.
The good news is that nuclear technologies are diversified. And one of the biggest news in the industry is small modular reactors.
Laboratorul Național din Idaho, aflat în nord-vestul Statelor Unite, este unul din cele 17 laboratoare ale Departamentului de Energie și cel mai vechi din țară, fiind construit în 1949 de Comisia pentru Energie Atomică. Laboratorul are o înaltă expertiză în energie nucleară, energii regenerabile și soluții de securitate cibernetică pentru infrastructura critică. Are 5.700 de angajați și se întinde pe o suprafață de 10 ori cât cea a Bucureștiului, 2.300 de kilometri pătrați.
Nuclear power in the U.S. was born on what is now the Idaho National Laboratory site. 52 different reactors were demonstrated on the site over the years. Our U.S. nuclear Navy was also formed on the site. So we're kind of the epicenter for nuclear energy research and development in the U.S.
We have established this bridging approach where we do research that supports industry broadly, and it is then out in the public domain because it's federally funded.
Niciun alt laborator nu are facilități atât de diverse și avansate pentru testarea noilor combustibili și materiale nucleare. Reactorul de testare avansat a fost pus în funcțiune în 1967.
This is one of the premier test reactors in the world. Operates at 250 megawatts thermal, which makes it a very large test reactor. A facility like this in the United States, there are only two. This reactor is bigger. Think of the test reactors as a neutron source. Those little particles, those neutrons, will hit uranium atoms and cause those uranium atoms to split. That's called fission. Besides the atoms splitting and the other neutrons coming, it produces a lot of heat. That heat will make water hot. That can then turn into steam, and the steam spins a turbine, and the turbine creates electricity. Every coal atom that I burn, if I take a uranium atom, you're probably 200 million times more powerful than just the coal itself.
Traditionally, in the U.S. and beyond, nuclear reactors are on the scale of 1 gigawatt electric output. Those can power in the U.S. up to 250,000 homes each, so very significant size. But also that means a very significant construction project.
The approach had been for nuclear for a long time was bigger and bigger. You know, the bigger you are, you improve your economics. That's maybe not necessarily as true anymore.
So small modular reactors are really 300 megawatts or less. So for example, in the NuScale technology, that comes in a design where you can add reactor modules as you go up to 12.
Reactoarele avansate pot produce de la 1 megawatt până la peste 1 gigawatt și pot fi micro, mici sau mari. Cele mici au capacitatea instalată între 20 și 300 de megawatts. Dar sunt reactoarele nucleare modulare mici o nouă tehnologie revoluționară?
I think it's a mistake to view small modular reactors as a revolutionary new technology. If you look at the nuclear-powered Navy in the US, right? Most of the reactors that are running on aircraft carriers or submarines, they're small. it simply was not deployed in the civilian industry. So, and the nuclear navy is there for many decades.
They're not really new. They're new in that they're being commercialized now, but the NuScale design is a smaller light water reactor.
But I say it's a new technology because it has a lot of advancements in design that is going to help it perform even better. And there are over 20 projects that are planning to operate a small modular reactor by 2030 between the US and Canada.
We started in 2007. That was back in the United States, what was called the first nuclear renaissance. There were probably 34, 35 applications to build new nuclear plants in the US at the time. Then we hit the Great Recession, and then we had the events at Fukushima, where everything paused. And most people paused. NuScale, we just continued to progress through that whole time frame in a very lonely place of being, why are you folks doing this when nobody else is? Well, we did it.
Accidentul de la Fukushima din 2011 a îngrozit omenirea. Unele state au decis să închidă centralele nucleare, precum Germania, care a închis-o pe ultima din cele 16 în aprilie 2023. Acesta era cel de-al treilea eveniment major din istoria energiei nucleare comerciale.
It was the first step in a nuclear nightmare.
The accident occurred here at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant a dozen miles south of Harrisburg.
We had a nuclear incident in the United States called 3 Mile Island, and that really got a lot of attention. No one was injured from that incident. No contamination escaped the site, and that's way back in 1979. Chernobyl is a different case. Chernobyl is a very different reactor technology than what you have in your country.
We have Chernobyl, which was a Russian design. It's very different from U.S. technology. Our technology could not go through the scenario that Chernobyl went through. But in that case, because of the faulty design of the Russian reactors, many people did die.
Chernobyl showed us that sometimes you cannot stop the reactor when you want to stop it. I was a student in Ukraine when Chernobyl disaster happened.
In Russia, most of them were really from a late 50s and 60s design.
Fukushima disaster is another example of different factors creating a catastrophic situation.
Fukushima, you had a combination of natural events, but they didn't consider two major disasters at the same time.
They require active, passive safety systems such as diesel generators to keep the systems cool, but the tsunami essentially flooded the diesel generators.
But again, nobody was directly injured from the nuclear part of that incident.
Industria nucleară a trebuit să regândească designul reactoarelor, ținând cont de accidentul din Japonia.
There have been billions of dollars of changes that have happened to the U.S. fleet as a result of that event.
In these small modular reactors, they have what's called passive safety mechanisms where if power is lost or if someone turns something off, the reactor is built so that it automatically will shut down just by gravity.
Well, these advanced reactor technologies, like the NuScale design that Romania is looking at, do not depend on power or additional water to stay cool. It can stay cool indefinitely, even in the face of a Fukushima-type event.
These plants that we're talking about building don't need that additional cooling. They're safe. They don't need backup power. They can continue to have passive safety to cool them.
And also SMRs will use natural processes such as gravity or convection to ensure safety. For example, some may be designed to shut down without electricity, whereas traditional reactors have powered valves and pumps in their safety design.
But what we've demonstrated through the NRC, that's the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's review of our technology, is two key safety enhancements. One is an unlimited coping period, which means we can safely shut down NuScale Power plant without any additional water, operator action, or power. So that's a huge, huge improvement. Second is that because of our design, the emergency planning zone, that is the area that you would have to evacuate in the event of a emergency, is only 300 yards or 300 meters. In the United States, that is typically 10-mile radius.
Accidentul de la Fukushima nu a stopat cercetările în domeniul energiei nucleare, dimpotrivă. În ultimii 20 de ani, investițiile în energia nucleară au întrunit consensul republicanilor și democraților. Pentru prima oară, după 50 de ani, cineva se gândea să adapteze tehnologia instalată pe submarinele nucleare și să o facă viabilă pentru civili, să o modernizeze și să o facă mai sigură.
The U.S. nuclear Navy has deployed small light water reactors in their submarines and carriers for more than 5 decades. And they have done that with an impeccable safety record we're quite aware of. As I mentioned, the nuclear Navy was born on this site.
They knew it could be commercialized. And of course, companies like Westinghouse and General Electric eventually did do that. But they actually were some of the ones that helped the Navy build those original SMRs.
So the small modular reactors we're looking at today are not exactly the technology that's being taken from our military. It's actually advancements of the large light water reactor technology.
Certificarea designului reactoarelor modulare mici avea să fie făcută de Comisia de Reglementare în domeniul nuclear și avea să dureze 6 ani. Atestarea finală avea să devină oficială în februarie 2023, tehnologia NuScale fiind astfel prima brevetată în lume.
So the process involves both a technical review and a rulemaking process so that we can add the design to our rules. With a design of this magnitude and also first of a kind, there were several public comments. There's also hearing processes that the commission has to be involved in.
And so for every piece, NRC requires a statistic and probability and statistics associated with the failure of that piece. And that's just a lot of work to go through.
In 2007, he had 3 patents, a handful of people. We now have over 600 patents, over 500 people working for the company. And importantly, we've invested over $1.5 billion in research and development of licensing and deploying our technology.
So the NRC did a very thorough review of the NuScale design, and we concluded that it met our safety requirements and could be built according to our safety requirements.
The big improvement has been going more toward pure passive safety, that you can't do anything to hurt them. So these are extremely safe technologies.
Do you think that in the future these SMRs will become the mainstream?
I think if they work out, yes, I believe they can become the main source of nuclear energy for the generation of electricity. There were 11 nations looking at, and a total of 23 different companies had put up designs of small modular reactors.
Well, we're in pre-application with several companies. The first one we've approved is the NuScale design, but there are several companies that we're in pre-application discussions with for various designs, not just small modular reactors.
În Statele Unite, industria nucleară comercială este privată. Companiile trebuie să-și planifice atent costurile de cercetare, dezvoltare și producție, investițiile fiind uriașe. Trebuie să aplice pentru subvenții de la guvern și să strângă bani de la investitori.
The government of the United States cannot tell what to do to company A, B, or C. So they need to see that they will have incomes, right, after this investment. So the typical cost of construction is between 5 and 7 billion. So
We've been very fortunate in that the United States government has supported that effort with nearly $600 million of cost-sharing grants from the Department of Energy, and the rest has come from the private sector.
În mai 2022, compania NuScale era listată la bursă. În acel moment avea o capitalizare de $2 miliarde.
We managed to raise $340 million of capital to bring us through to the next phases. We're talking trillions of dollars, but there are trillions of dollars out there available if properly mobilized.
Costurile mari ale unui reactor nuclear se amortizează în timp.
The reactor in the United States is initially licensed for 40 years by our regulator, but it has an option to extend the license another 20 years. And there's talk that we could even go to 100 years for these plants. And so the same is true for the small modular reactors.
Peste 20 de companii americane dezvoltă reactoare avansate care vor schimba modul în care ne raportăm la industria nucleară. Acestea vor fi mai mici, mai flexibile și mai puțin costisitoare. Vor putea produce apă potabilă prin desalinizare, hidrogen sau energie termică în funcție de nevoile comunității. Energia nucleară ar deveni astfel accesibilă și statelor în curs de dezvoltare sau sărace.
The introduction of small and micro reactors to those communities could be life-changing for those communities because then we have added that potential to produce clean water, provide electricity to the community, produce hydrogen that can be the feedstock for fertilizers to amplify the agricultural industries in those regions as well.
They can produce more power for the grid when it's needed and produce less power to the grid when it's not needed. They can produce heat for district heating for the homes and other businesses, or they could produce hydrogen for hydrogen uses in industrial processes.
Națiunile lumii se află pe de o parte într-o competiție pentru resurse și putere, pe de altă parte trebuie să coopereze pentru binele planetei. Pentru prima dată, națiunile au convenit să coopereze pentru a combate schimbările climatice prin acordul de la Paris din 2015, care prevede limitarea creșterii temperaturii la 1,5 grade Celsius peste nivelurile preindustriale. Depășirea acestui prag riscă să dezlănțuie fenomene climatice extreme, secete, valuri de căldură, precipitații severe. La Paris, națiunile au convenit că emisiile de gaze cu efect de seră trebuie să scadă cu 43% până în 2030. Concluziile ultimei întâlniri anuale din marja Convenției pentru Schimbări Climatice, COP27, din noiembrie din Egipt, la care au participat peste 100 de șefi de stat și de guvern, sunt critice. Pentru cele mai multe dintre state, competiția pentru resurse și putere este mai importantă decât amenințarea climatică.
Our planet is still in the emergency room. We need to drastically reduce emissions now, and this is an issue this COP did not address. The red line we must not cross is the line that takes our planet over the 1.5 degree temperature limit. To have any hope of keeping to 1.5, we need to massively invest in renewables and end our addiction to fossil fuels.
La nivel mondial, sectorul energiei contribuie cel mai mult la emisiile globale de gaze cu efect de seră, fiind responsabil pentru aproximativ 35% din totalul emisiilor. Decarbonizarea sistemului energetic este esențială pentru atingerea țintelor fixate prin acordul de la Paris. Statele au găsit soluții diferite în politicile naționale privind neutralitatea climatică și decarbonizarea. În Statele Unite, reactoarele nucleare în general și cele mici modulare în special sunt parte a soluției. În Uniunea Europeană, la nivelul Comisiei, energiile regenerabile sunt soluția, în timp ce unele state membre au ales și energia nucleară.
What happened with the promises of the politicians that this will be the major source of energy, solar and wind?
If you think you're going to get all your energy from the wind or from the sun, you better think about how much land area you'd have to cover with solar panels and or wind mills, to generate electricity. And then you begin to see.
So look at the solar. Right now, percentage of solar in the United States is about 3%. Quite similar in Europe. After all of this incentives, after all of the effort to boost solar, it's not stable enough. It depends on the weather. Same story with the wind. You need to cover a lot of territory with the wind.
To replace what is currently fossil-based firm power, which for us is primarily coal and natural gas, we need something that is also firm and clean, and nuclear is really one of your only choices there.
Presently, there are 92 reactors running in the United States, producing about 20% of energy. And this is 55% of the clean energy, carbon-free energy. So we need to build about 100 more reactors over the next 30 years.
So we do want to say by 2035, on our electricity sector, we want it to be all clean energy. You're going to have obviously a lot of growth of renewables, but you really need a good mixture of all of these. So I expect that we will have significant growth of nuclear. Again, right now, we have about 100 gigawatts. I think we will have to, between now and 2050, double that or maybe triple that.
So that surprises people, how nuclear power has just quietly been generating terawatts of power for us as a globe.
Comisia Europeană este mai sceptică privind viitorul energiei nucleare, reflectând mai ales poziția Germaniei.
Only the net zero technologies that we deem strategic for the future, like solar panels, batteries, and electrolyzers, for example, have access to the full advantages and benefits. So the cutting-edge nuclear is in for specific fields, but not for all.
High-temperature reactors, using nuclear for industrial heat or hydrogen production has really changed the value of what nuclear energy can do. That has expanded into Congress, where they see the value of new nuclear technologies, and there's been this wave of bipartisan support to help commercialize these technologies.
În 2021, președintele Biden semna o lege prin care se alocau 368 de miliarde de dolari pentru atingerea obiectivelor privind neutralitatea climatică. O parte din acești bani mergeau și către industria nucleară, una din puținele teme politice care întrunesc consensul în Congres.
And this summer, the United States Congress passed, and I signed into law my proposal for the biggest, most important climate bill in the history of our country, the Inflation Reduction Act. It includes less than I asked for, but a significant amount, $368 billion.
There are two major events in government decisions in the U.S. The Inflation Reduction Act and Infrastructure Act. And both of these have put a lot of attention into development of nuclear.
The Inflation Reduction Act is the largest climate legislation that the United States has ever passed. It's truly monumental. And it includes a lot of tax credits, investment and production tax credits, for both existing and nuclear technologies.
So most of our work, we're usually relying on annual appropriations. That law actually said, here's $2.5 billion in advance, go forth and do those demonstrations.
With the IRA, U.S. is finally back at the table on climate leadership. The impact is already being seen of the IRA, and it's incredible.
So when you're starting to throw in extra multi-billion dollars, it's a very good incentive for moving forward those technologies.
Nuclear energy enjoys strong bipartisan support in the United States. So it's one of the few things that our Congress can agree on, is that we need more nuclear energy, and that nuclear energy is important to achieving our national goals, whether those are goals in energy, economics, environmental goals. Even national security is directly tied to the success of nuclear energy.
Războiul dus de Rusia împotriva Ucrainei a schimbat percepția asupra securității energetice. 5 țări europene importă uraniu de 200 de milioane de euro în fiecare an din Rusia pentru cele 18 centrale construite de Uniunea Sovietică sau Rusia. În 2020, 20% din uraniul natural din Uniunea Europeană și 15% din cel din Statele Unite proveneau din Rusia. În ultimii 10 ani, Rusia a inițiat construirea celor mai multe centrale nucleare în lume, 15, printre care cele din Turcia și Ungaria.
As Russia has, again, well demonstrated to us, energy is being used as a weapon to a large extent. That's not acceptable.
Then the recent Russian attack on Ukraine has really put a spotlight on the need for energy security. And energy security means a lot of things, but one of those things means the security of the supply of the fuel.
This is something that we are all realizing now, that Russia is not a reliable supplier of nuclear energy. So we are working with Romania as a strategic partner on your energy security, on your energy diversification, and small modular reactors and other nuclear power, including at the Chernobyl plant, are also ways to implement this strategic energy partnership.
There is a well-established track record of Russia and China using energy as a weapon to basically tie other countries into energy dependencies so they can be more vulnerable to geopolitical influence from Moscow, from Beijing. There absolutely is a geopolitical national security imperative in all of this. Energy security equals national security.
There's no such a thing as a free cheese, right? It's usually can be found in the mousetrap. So I wouldn't be too excited about this free cheese advertisement by Rosatom.
When Russia or China enter into an agreement to sell nuclear technologies abroad, they often lock the countries into years-long inequitable relationships of staffing the plants, of so the supply chains for the fuels. The United States is approaching nuclear exports strictly in the terms of nuclear diplomacy and climate diplomacy, and ensuring that these projects benefit our international partners as much as our own.
Pentru statele care produc reactoare nucleare, colaborarea și parteneriatele nu sunt doar acte de comerț, ci o formă de soft power în cadrul unor alianțe politice și militare.
Energy security is national security, and so we would encourage Romania or any other country that is seeking nuclear power to look for those standards, high standards of safety, of security, and of safeguards in selecting a partner for nuclear energy.
I think the American approach should be, let's offer some of our best technology to our friends and partners. The United States will be there as a reliable commercial partner working on advancing clean, reliable, safe nuclear technology in Romania and throughout countries in the region. And I think that will hopefully speak for itself. And that approach is ultimately much, much better than the sort of approach that we see taken by Russia and others.
Peste 30 de companii din 13 țări dezvoltă designuri de reactoare modulare mici. Care din acestea vor rămâne pe piață va depinde de certificare, de avantajele comerciale și de producție și, nu în ultimul rând, de avantajele financiare oferite. Indiferent că este vorba de reactoare avansate sau tradiționale, mici sau mari, relația este una de lungă durată.
In the United States, the plants we have out there now, we're looking at licensing for 80 years. So these are really, 100-year commitments. So we want to make sure that, yes, we have allied sources and options for deploying these technologies. So it is critical to be able to counter Russia in this area space.
I understand that there had previously been some agreements with China, General Nuclear in the past, and I think Romania understanding that, clearly perceiving the geopolitical implications of a potential relationship with China, cut that off and opted for expanded bilateral relationship with the United States instead.
The point I want to dispel is that it's not like the United States is not doing this and telling Romania, please go first, and then we'll see how it goes. Many different countries that are actually knocking on our door looking to do the same thing. And it's not like we're going to say, oh, please stop and wait, let's see how Romania goes. We're going to work with any of our close partners and friends that want to work on this technology together.
You have to ask yourself, is that the kind of energy marriage you want? And right now, I have a really hard time seeing how countries will want to be tied to Russia, just considering everything they're doing, not just in Ukraine, but overall.
Well, so, if you look at Rosatom, it is the government, right? If you look at the Chinese suppliers, it is the government. If a certain country is willing to cut off the gas in order to leverage you politically, are they going to cut off their technology to you when you're trying to operate it in your home, whether it's nuclear technology or gas technology or anything? Are they a reliable partner? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that, everything here is rosy and it's all good. It's a challenge. It's hard. But giving people options is always a good thing.
Prima centrală din lume cu reactoare modulare mici NuScale va fi construită în Idaho, la Laboratorul Național Idaho, pentru un consorțiu de comunități locale din statul Utah. A doua centrală din lume va fi construită în România, la Doicești.
They represent 50 municipalities in the U.S. West that provide power to their members. They received the Department of Energy Cost Share Award of $1.355 billion in 2020. And since that time, they've been progressing the development in both the licensing and the design of the plant. And so we expect them on that schedule that they would receive their approvals in 2026, begin the safety-related construction, and be that first module operational in 2029.
So if any applicant desires to build a plant, and you mentioned UAPs, we would look at various aspects, various safety and environmental aspects. We look at geology, geography, hydrology. We also would look at, for example, earthquake potential, like historical weather, and we would also examine whether or not either the construction or the operation would impact the human population.
We do plan to demonstrate these technologies as rapidly as possible in the U.S. I do expect that a number of these technologies will be demonstrated here first, providing other countries more confidence in the systems as well. And we can work through those first demonstrations.
În Uniunea Europeană, electricitatea generată de centralele nucleare a scăzut cu 20% în ultimii 15 ani, cifrându-se astăzi la 731 de teravați, aproape de producția din Statele Unite. 13 din cele 27 de state membre au centrale atomice. Franța are cea mai mare pondere a energiei nucleare în mixul său de energie electrică, 69%, media europeană fiind de 25%, în România fiind de 19%. Spre deosebire de Statele Unite, la Bruxelles, energia nucleară nu este văzută ca o soluție pentru atingerea neutralității climatice, mizându-se pe energiile regenerabile. Țările își pot configura însă mixul energetic în funcție de propriile politici, fiind suverane în materie. Preocupările privind independența energetică sunt diferite de la țară la țară. Contextul regional, geografic și politic contează. Criza gazului a lăsat multe state în situații de risc fără alternativă. Germania, puternic dependentă de gazul rusesc, a ales să redeschidă provizoriu câteva mine de cărbune, nu însă și pe cele nucleare.
There's a lot of confusion in terms of kind of how serious is EU about supporting nuclear through its taxonomies, because there's still division internally. There are some countries that are hesitant, and I would say kind of, Germany is the leading voice of that hesitant coalition.
There should be incentives, particularly for first mover countries like Romania in the case of SMRs. And I think that's where actually Western Europe should look to Central and Eastern Europe as the heart of this nuclear renaissance and try to learn, because I think there's a lot of ideas and a lot of good proposals on what can be done to change policy.
Țările din estul NATO par a fi mai preocupate de garanții de securitate energetică sporite, poate datorită trecutului comunist și experienței istorice cu Rusia. România, Polonia, Cehia, Slovacia, Bulgaria caută soluții în energia nucleară.
We've worked with Poland, and we actually started working with Poland probably about the same time we started working with Romania.
The United States supports all of our companies overseas. I think the choice for NuScale to work in Romania was a joint one. We chose each other. Romania and the United States have a strong strategic partnership, and energy security is an important part of that partnership.
În episodul următor vom afla cum va fi implementată noua tehnologie nucleară în România.